We live yet, bro?
I'm like geeking.
I think it should be good. Yep, we're live.
We live? Oh, Jesus Christ.
Live, baby.
Live.
You're going to want to delete those other ones.
Yeah, I did.
Sure.
All right, and then count down before we start, like, doing the actual recording.
Okay.
I gotta get my voice ready.
They were looking good.
Me.
All right, are you guys ready? Are we live?
We have one concurrent viewer right now.
I was born ready.
God.
Yeah, who is that?
I stopped.
Oh, now we got
watching.
two concurrent. Oh, now we're back to one.
Um,
All right.
That's probably
we
me.
ready to
Okay,
start
I'm sharing the
recording?
link.
Yeah, hit it.
5,
For it.
4.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bona Fide Talk. Welcome back, guys. We really appreciate you tuning in. We've got Cameron, we've got Blake, and we've got Brian Eduardo here, alongside, last but not least, Garrett.
You look like
Hopefully,
Slim Shady
hopefully
there,
my
Garrett.
Yeah, I'm going for the Slim Shady look right now. Just testing out the waters a little bit. Last week, we kind of talked about the look. It was redneck hipster. It was a little different. Cameron had the fade. The fade is not present here today, or else I would have
I got the hat.
shouted him out. It is being covered up by a hat. I'm wearing a hat. The glasses have been ditched this week. Tuned
Blake's
for the
the only
fashion
nerd.
statements.
Friggin'
Yeah,
nerd,
he's always
Blake.
the nerd.
Quit body shaming me.
Uh,
with glasses.
Stay tuned for the fashion statements by our co-host. We've actually just lost Brian. I can't say I'm surprised. He's definitely the most
Brian's
questionable.
here.
Still here.
Brian's here?
I see Brian.
Am I
He's
lagging?
here. He's skipping
Okay.
around.
Okay, my bad. But anyway, guys, we really appreciate you guys coming back and listening in. We felt pretty good about episode 2. We got good feedback. We also got roasted, so continue to give us feedback, both good and bad. We want to
Appreciate
get
it.
better as we go along.
Who got roasted the most?
Me. Yeah,
Definitely
I'll
Blake.
take priority on that one. Yeah, but tough skin's important. Tough skin's important. The only way to get better is to know your faults. So,
Through that.
but speaking of getting roasted, I want to talk about get us started here with a little awkward moment of the week, guys. We were talking before we started recording, and I think a few of us here had some pretty awkward moments experience. Well, pretty much, I just want to get to start off with this. We all pretty much live a perpetual awkward moment. Just be real.
That's my life.
Embarrassing moments pretty much garner our entire lifestyles. So, Ryan, do you want to start us off on share your story for the week?
Yeah, so my week was pretty good. My company opened up a new office, and so Friday was the first day in the new office. I had a new desk. I have one of those, real cool sit-stand desks. So just started up a meeting. I'm standing up. I'm in the zone. AirPods are in. Yeah, just, really engaged. And on my peripheral, I see one of the executive boards. He's like pretty much the lead sales guy. Very like extroverted guy. I see him like give him kind of a nod from across the room. And then I see he's like kind of walking my way, kind of dismiss it, whatnot. And he like walks behind me and gives me like, just a pat on the back. And I completely just jump up and just freak out on the spot. So that was my awkward moment of the week. Yeah. But
right on, dude. Yeah, Brian, you're also in that club, brother. We're all awkward moment extraordinaires here. I got a good one for you guys. I think I might have told y'all about this earlier this week. So my awkward moment. Wednesday morning, I wake up, right? And I literally felt like I was about to die. I felt like my heart was about to fall out of my chest. I felt like this weird feeling in my chest, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, like my heart's about to give out. I'm dying. Went throughout the course of the day, like did a little research and stuff, and I put 2 and 2 together. So I had spent Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning in a golf club, going to the driving range, trying to improve my game and just a slice. Turns out I have a muscle strain in my chest, and I'm not dying. I'm I just was working too hard at the game, trying to improve my irons and get my drive off the ground and on the freeway, and just hurt myself in the process. So yeah, that's my awkward moment of the week. Thought I was dying.
I think that's a good
Bona Fide
argument
Talk
against
listeners.
physical activity.
We're gonna have to talk, but we're gonna have to save that talk for another day. I will argue that one to the end. But anyway,
think you're
so
just
that's
getting
mine. Cameron, or mine, my brother. Cameron, you got one?
Me, I don't really have one. I'm gonna let you down this week like you did. Let us down last week with the car talk. So I don't really have one.
Get on, Blake.
Other than the general awkward moments I have pretty much constantly. I was teaching my class Monday last week, and we were reviewing for their exam on Tuesday, and I'm just up there, and I'm normally pretty loud when I'm speaking, and I was just getting real into teaching, or real into reviewing and stuff, and I just lay out this massive voice crack, just in the
Jeez.
middle, like
No
my voice
way.
goes from one
One way.
down to like prepubescent Blake, and like the entire class starts laughing, and and I'm just looking
Oh
up there
my
like an
God.
idiot.
Give me a reenactment real quick. Give me a quick reenactment.
It
me see
was too awkward. I
Oh.
don't want to embarrass myself again. I don't want another awkward
Right
moment
on.
for next week's podcast. I think we lost Brian.
Right on. Well,
I think he's gonna come back. I think he's
Yeah.
having problems
Come
because of this weather. But he's coming back.
yeah, guys, we're
Dish.
We won't leave
Much.
him behind.
we won't. So let's just mutually agree that embarrassing moments are what we live for. This podcast is gonna be a lot of embarrassing moments, as you guys already know. So stay tuned, and you'll find plenty more. Guys, so one thing that we really wanted to harp on this for our podcast today is we wanted to pack some drinks. So why don't you guys tell the listeners what you're drinking? I have a ensuing question coming after. So real quick.
All right, let me go grab mine. I'll be right back.
Okay. Why don't? All right. Well, I guess I'll start us off then. So I'm sporting the Sweetwater 420 extra pale ale glass, and to go along with that, I have a Sweetwater in the glass. A nice
Yeah,
nice
Blake,
Atlanta craft brew.
Shout out to the hometown homies. You just encompass everything 420, don't you? That's just what you live by. Everything 420 is you.
I'm a constant.
All elements of life.
I'm constantly
I'm
vibing.
back in.
Right on.
by the
Right
way.
on.
Welcome, Brian.
Brian, we missed you, brother. Tell us what you're drinking tonight.
Old Classic City. The tried and true, easy drinking beer.
What are the odds?
Not
you're
really
having
into
that right
those. Absolutely zero.
now? Okay.
But not
Right
an
on.
IPA
Hi,
guy,
Cameron.
so just need a easy drinking beer is kind of my choice.
I got myself also a Sweetwater IPA.
Wow.
Just the standard IPA. Just a yellow can Sweetwater.
Right on.
Actually,
Right
my
on,
brother.
guys. Shout out to the boys. Shout out to the boys in
Stole it.
St. Louis because I'm drinking a Chickalobe Ultra,
Michelob.
or what we
yeah.
like to call Mommy Light. Little Michelob, yes sir. All for it. A couple weeks ago, my 23rd birthday, had a couple people over the house, man, and we had a keg. And we had probably 20, 25 people over at the house, and I did my fair share of keg stands. The goal was we started out the night, and the goal was no one left the party. Party was not over until the keg floated in the pool, right?
Nice.
So, everyone put in their efforts, and we got that mother effing keg to float, man. We tossed it into the pool at the end of the night. It floated. Did our part. I have
Wow.
not had a Michelob Ultra since because the keg was a Michelob Ultra keg, and this is my
Jeez.
first one since.
That's awesome.
You learn when you get older, and I know you guys can relate to this one too. Like, you get older, man. Those hangovers just knock you on your ass.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude! I swear I was hungover for 72 hours.
Jeez.
I swear. Like, a hangover
I'm-
these days, it's like I can't think straight. It's like a
It ain't worth it.
fogginess in my
These
You're a
brain.
little laggy.
Yeah.
Your
These
brain's a little
days.
laggy. Yeah.
In your
Oh yeah,
in your-
literally.
in your later years.
Yeah, mid college I
brother,
started getting those 2-day hangovers, and now I think I'm getting the 3 days.
Oh my gosh, you guys are old. I don't get hangovers at all. Boom.
God,
okay,
you
Cameron.
genetic superior human.
Oh, it's because
I
it's because
shouldn't
he
be able
drinks
to
like.
handle alcohol. I'm a quarter native, and natives are notorious to have problems with alcohol.
Ooh, Cameron, that's a good question. I'm going to circle back to ask you about later when we talk about sports. Interesting. Okay, right on.
How does that relate to sport?
Stay tuned, listeners. All right, guys. So, the big thing that's really been taking the world by storm over the last year or half year has been seltzers. Seltzers have taken over the alcohol world. We can all agree on that. You started out with White Claw, then you had Truly. You've got Bud Light Seltzer, Smirnoff Seltzer, which Cameron was sucking down earlier. You've got
Why did you
Corona Seltzer.
You weren't supposed to tell
pretty
anybody. That's why I got this.
pretty much in like every major alcohol come out with their own form of seltzer. So, yep, there it is. Cameron is showing off to our YouTube listeners. Shout out to you guys. So, guys, I want to hear y'all's take. This was actually a listener question sent in by our favorite Ben Wynette, and he wants to know, where do we stand on craft beer versus seltzers going forward? Which do we prefer, and where do we think the future is going to be with each of those?
I think seltzer has a big future. Just the way the market's gone with health, I think, is the reason that's getting pushed. That's the reason I choose seltzer sometimes, is because it just seems a bit healthier than having a beer.
Yeah, I agree. I think culture is starting to shift towards a more health conscious, in that direction. And yeah, when you get a seltzer, you're only getting like 100 calories in a can. Not really any carbohydrates. It's just seltzer water and alcohol with some flavoring. So yeah, I mean, I know lately I've been cutting back on the beer and just going for seltzers, trying to keep that those pounds off.
Girlish figure.
Yeah.
So, watch your girlish figure.
Yes, you gotta maintain that for sure. But I think both of them have a big future. I think craft beer has a big future as well because so this like I told you guys I typically go for a seltzer nowadays, but this weekend I was just kind of feeling some beers just because I like the taste of a nice. I sound like such a douche right now, but I like the taste of a good IPA.
I like an IPA. I like the hops in my beer.
And also, so local breweries are kind of on the rise, especially in our hometown, Canton. I visited Asheville last year, and those, there was so many local breweries. They said that they've just continuously been adding those over the past 10 years. So I think that's, I guess, pre-coronavirus, that was a big gathering point for people. Just breweries coming out with their own different types of beer. So yeah, I think both of them are going to kind of start edging out the more light beer market, where I think those will be the two main.
All right, Brian, go ahead before I roast you, Athens people.
Oh God, I can't wait for this.
My viewpoint on the whole seltzer thing is, so I don't think it really started taking effect until like sophomore year of college. And for all of our listeners, I graduated in December and I had spent 4.5 years. So let's say seltzers probably about 3 years ago since their big inception, where you started out with the White Claws and whatnot. The reason I think like for their explosive growth was, so early on in college, if you go on like a date night or something, like girls are normally, it's one of the two. The guys are like drinking beer or I don't know, some form of liquor, and then girls were typically drinking, like Smirnoff or mixed drinks or something. I knew like a select few girls that did like beer, but I think the seltzers came in and eased it to where like the girls didn't have to drink the shitty vodka anymore. And for those that didn't really like the taste of beer, that was a good medium. And then you start seeing the demand at like the fraternity tailgates and whatnot, and like the coolers are full of seltzers now. And then they just kind of infected everybody and just kind of took over.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and it really started. I will say with our generation, man, the seltzer game really started at like the college age. We really kind of took over the White Claw culture. The really cool thing about it is like, previous times like those type of drinks have been kind of modeled closer towards like the female demographic. But we all can agree that just as many guys that we know drink the White Claws and the Trulies, man, like really versatile, right? So that's their thing. They're really versatile. They appeal to all crowds. Okay, so I understand why they're taking off. So I just looked up a couple numbers. It looks like as of 2020, the seltzer hard alcohol market in the United States accounts for 550 million of the total like alcohol like market cap. Makes sense. So like they're making big progress, and there's a lot of competitors in that market right now, right? Here's my thing though. It feels very fatty. It's a fad. It feels that way, at least to me. Right? So think about it. These seltzer drinks, right? First off, like Cameron mentioned, they seem healthier. Okay. So you drink, and like Blake mentioned, they seem healthier. You drink one to kind of keep the LBs off, and you feel a little better about yourself, opposed to not drinking a hard, heavy beer. Very summery, too. The very, like, right? So, like, I might crave a White Claw in the summer, in the fall when it's hot, opposed to like maybe in the winter, right?
Right.
Maybe all alcohol is that way, but it seems like seltzers are very much that way. If I were investing, if I were putting my money where my mouth was, going forward, my money's in craft beer. Really, it seems timeless to me, right? I think our generation, like what we are looking for, craft beer really kind of answers that question. They offer experience, they offer a story, offer something uniqueness, right? Millennials love all three of those things. We love to go to a brewery. We love to be told a cool story about how the brewery got started, what it stands for, and we love to have beers that other people haven't had. As I sit here and drinking Michelob Ultra. That's just kind of what I think. I think that seltzers are awesome. I don't like them. I don't drink them. I understand why they're taking off like crazy, but if I'm putting my money where my mouth is, I'm betting on beer going forward.
So follow up to that, what denotes a craft beer? Does that mean like an IPA? Does that mean
I think a
like
craft beer is something owned or something developed by a smaller brewery? Like Creature Comforts, for example, is like the ideal example of a craft beer. It's just they have that one brewery in Athens. Just things that are locally developed. I think where you have some someone developing that rather than like a larger corporation, like Anheuser-Busch or Miller Coors.
Right.
I definitely think it's the independence.
Yeah.
All business and the independent aspect there that really differentiates this craft beer from like other like major breweries.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Gotcha.
But anyway, no, I mentioned the Athens thing, man. So all of our listeners out there, I went to Ole Miss, and these three guys lived in Athens, and I'd go and visit and stuff, and I noticed after a couple years, man, like my buddies in Athens were changing, and I'm like, what is going on with these guys, man? We'd go out and we'd go like to the grocery store to pick up beer, and I'd be picking up a 24-pack of Miller Lite or Michelob Ultra or something domestic, something easy to suck down, and these guys are picking up like multiple 6-packs of some weird beer I've never heard of before in my life. I'm like, what the hell is going on with these guys, man? Turns out they've got like 4 craft breweries. They're spending their free time studying at breweries. Like the beer culture in Athens, Georgia is intense. And I learned that from you guys can it up out there, man. It's funny.
Yeah, man, it's a way of life.
Hey, real quick, since we talked about embarrassing moments, I gotta share the story, man.
Yes,
so,
yes, I think I know what it is.
2018, December of 2018, we went on a 10-person about at Breckenridge, right? So, like I just mentioned, Blake and Brian are big IPA guys, especially Blake. Good lord, craft beer aficionado.
Correction, I hate IPAs.
Misspeak. So we go to a total go to a total dive bar, man. This place feels like an absolute biker bar. We open up the door and like there are grown ass men playing pool with like beards and like biker jackets on. Everyone we open up the door and music stops. Everyone looks at us. It's like one of those scenes out of a movie.
They're like, oh,
We're just
great.
like,
these
oh
college
shit.
guys, what are they coming in for?
Yeah, we're wearing like barber jackets and like college hats and shit, and they're just like, oh god. So Blake walks up to the bar. I'm standing squarely behind him listening. He goes up to the bar and he asks the bartender, hey man, what would you recommend? And the bartender puts his elbows on the bar, points at Manzer and says, bro, it's just beer. What the fuck do you want? And we all lose our minds, dude. This bartender just roasted Manzer. Was like, dude, seriously, it's just a beer. Just pick one.
It's just a beer, bro. Just pick one. Fuck you. You
Yeah,
got your
dude.
tip now.
I don't think that guy got a tip from
No, he
Manzer,
didn't.
but it really personifies where these guys stand, man. So anyway, glad we locked up that discussion. I think that's a really pertinent one in today's times. Another pertinent discussion in this week's time is there's a new vehicle that was released. It really caught the headlines, guys. And as our three experts on vehicles, I'd love for you guys to fill me in on why why do I want a 2021 Ford Bronco? Give me the deets. Spill the beans.
Cameron, you want to kind of elaborate? I don't know as much about the different options. Like I know there's a 4-door, 2-door. I don't know if you've looked further into the specs and whatnot. Do you have any kind of background info in that?
Yeah, I did a little bit of research into what they're offering, and because it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big launch. It's been in the making for a while. They've been talking about the Ford Bronco, bringing it back for a long time. I think the last one they had was in the 90s, that O.J. Simpson, 96, that O.J. Simpson era of Ford Bronco, and it wasn't too popular kind of after that. So they didn't sell well, and they also didn't have a great design as the years went on into the 90s. So what they've done is they've brought back a great design. They've modernized it, but it's one of those retro styled modern cars like the Challenger that's just a caricature of what the old car used to be. And I think that's exactly what it is. It's got the big round circular headlights, the big rectangular grille, the flat panels and big fender flares, and it's designed just like the one from the 60s, the mid to late 60s, I think was when the first one came out.
Right.
So they look very similar, and it's been in the works for a while. So they've come out with a lot to offer. Did you see? Yeah. So you mentioned the 2-door and the 4-door. They have two. They offer both of those in the Bronco option. So the shorter 2-door wheelbase is actually a little bit longer than the Jeep, since that's going to be the big comparison. We can't avoid those at all. It's going to be the most direct comparison because that's the part of the market it's going after. Off-roading, a little bit more rugged. Jeep culture has gotten very, very big. And off-roading culture as well has gotten big. So they're going after that in a big way. So 2-door, 4-door, all kinds of options. Since I actually looked into it, I went on the website and looked at all the different trim levels. So I wrote them down, so I'm going to read them off. They have the base. They have the first edition, which people are buying now. They're only making 3,500 of them, and they have some of the best options from these following trim levels. They have the Big Bend.
How much are they selling for?
The base starts pretty reasonably. I think it's
so for the 2-door, the base is 28,500, and the 4-door is 33,200.
Yeah.
Okay,
so it's under 30, but then the trim levels go up from there. Big Bend, Black Diamond, Outer Banks, Badlands, and Wild Track. And so they all just have these different off-roading options, interior options, exterior options. They've gone down the route of options, and they're
Yeah.
pretty infinite.
I like that. I like
So
it when
my
they give you a lot of options.
Yeah.
right. One of the podcasts I listened to, so they had the head of Ford's. Essentially, Ford has a department for like special vehicles. So Ford GT, special edition Mustangs, and now the Bronco. And he was talking about some of the unique features. And I'll dive into a little bit of those. But something I thought was funny was throughout the entire podcast, he would not call out Jeep, but he was pretty much adding Jeep, but saying the competition. So one of the things they have implemented is something with the competition that consumers couldn't do was if they wanted to take their doors off, they had to leave them at home, or there wasn't really a storage option for them. Now with the Ford Broncos, you can take all the doors off and the roof panels off and store them in the back of the Bronco. So say you want to ride to work with everything off in the morning, but you see the forecast is coming through and there's going to be a shower. So you can actually go and put everything back to how it was, which I thought was really cool. And then another unique feature was so I don't know if y'all have rode in a four-door Jeep before, but if you're sitting in the back, there's this it's covered by a speaker bar, but essentially it's just a bar across the
Right.
middle for
Roll
like
bar.
structural integrity. Exactly. And a lot of the consumers don't like that because obviously it interferes with the open top experience. You're not, it's just kind of this big old bar in the way of everything. And so the Bronco has been designed when you take everything off, it is purely open air. There is no bar there. It has structural support going down the sides. So everything can be completely taken off and it can be taken with you. You don't have to worry about putting your doors in the garage and then, oh, what if it rains? I'm going to have to go home early or something like that. So they've really kind of gone in and seen every little aspect where the competition, aka Jeep, went wrong or just kind of got stagnant. And, for the longest time, Jeep has been the only one in this, off road / suburban vehicle market. So now I'm going to be really interested to see in the next coming years what Jeep does because they're going to have to answer it. Ford has spent probably, a decade or so dissecting the Jeep and looking at everything and improving it to now come out with a bang. And I think this Bronco is going to be sweet.
I've got a question on that the open top experience thing. So you said it had structural integrity on the sides. So are you saying that like are you protected from rollover if you have like the top removed?
Yeah. So you have bars going down like that, like the pillars.
Yeah.
And then there is a bar in the back, but it doesn't interfere with like the rear passengers.
people are
Like it
sitting.
doesn't obstruct their view.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it'd be
It's kind of
behind
like
their heads.
behind them.
Oh, okay,
Right.
that's cool. Yeah, because I was
So
wondering when you
almost
were
like
talking
a
about that.
land delay.
I was wondering how they, I'm sure there's some regulation on
Like
off-road
you have
vehicles
to
like
have.
that with
Yeah,
like a higher center of gravity. You would need some sort of protection if you,
Right.
because it's more likely to roll over in that than like a convertible where it's lower to the ground. But yeah, that's pretty
Right.
interesting. I think it seems like there's a lot of real innovative features in the newest iteration of this Bronco.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
they've
and
engineered
and
they've engineered every aspect of this car, like everything. Like I don't have enough personal experience with the Jeep, but do the mirrors actually, the side mirrors, do they actually come off when you take the
That's
front
another
door off?
thing. No, the Jeeps don't. If you take the doors off, you have to get new mirrors. The Bronco specifically called that out too. If you take the doors off, the mirrors are still there.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yep.
Wow.
and as a former Jeep owner, if my biggest complaint with the Jeep is how loud it gets, right? Like when you're in the Jeep and you're driving over 40 miles an hour, the cab is so loud. If Bronco can figure out a way to quiet down the cab when you're driving over like a average speed limit or whatever, that would be a game changer in my mind, just based on my experience. So a couple of things I want to add and get your input on real quick. First off, right now, you can go to Ford with a crisp Benjamin Franklin $100 bill, and you can go ahead and reserve your 2021 Bronco. Y'all
For
hopping on
only
the Ford website.
$100?
Oh, you reserve it, yeah. So like you don't buy it, you reserve it, right? So are y'all doing that right now as we speak, as we record this podcast?
I know for me, I'm not in the car market anyway, but if I were looking to buy one of these Fords, which they do, or one of these Broncos, which they do seem pretty interesting, I would probably wait for the 2022, 2023 model to let some of those inevitable bugs get hashed out.
Yep.
Like we
Right.
see in just different model generations of the same vehicle. Like my truck is the 2014 GMC Sierra, which was the first of that model year, and it had problems compared to the 2013 one. And this is like a completely new, refresh of the Ford Bronco series. So there, even it seems really cool. And like Cameron was saying, there's they've engineered the shit out of them. There's inevitably going to be some stuff that goes wrong that's going to get fixed in the coming years.
Right.
Right
I
on.
hope that'll be minimized. They are using a lot of tried and true components, like major components, as far as like the engines, their EcoBoost engines they've had for a while now, their transmissions, a lot of tried and true components. So it's not, I mean, the body panels, I think the suspension we'll have to see. Like Garrett said about the ride quality, how well the cabin noise is, and stuff like that. We'll only be able to know once we experience them. Right now, on paper, it's looking pretty great. The off-roading capabilities they've added to some of the higher up trim levels. They actually have an option called Sasquatch, and they actually put 35-inch tires on the car. So it's big feet called Sasquatch, 35-inch
Bigfoot,
tires.
baby.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And another thing, real quick, they have what's called GOAT mode in off-roading. So it's not greatest of all time, but it goes over any terrain.
Oh,
GOAT mode.
dog.
GOAT mode.
So
That is nuts, dude.
my main question on these is, so the base starts at just under 30,000 for the two-door option. I'm curious at how they're able to keep that price so low for something that seems packed with so many features. Like I'd really be interesting to get a hands-on experience with one of these and see what the material quality is made out of. Like just the seats, the door panels, all that stuff. Like I wonder what it's like close up in person rather than just looking at it online.
Yeah, the base level trim options are probably not that nice and probably not that exciting.
Right.
But I think that instead of going with the base level Bronco, somebody might be inclined to go with the Bronco Sport. Did y'all see that? Blake, can you you were showing pictures of the Bronco, right? Pull up the Bronco Sport for a second. This is actually what we'll start seeing on the road first.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is
They'll-
like a
I mean,
a Karen car.
more often for sure. In the first year, we'll see it a lot more often. They might deliver about the same time, but I think the Bronco Sports will be delivering sooner. So these they'll confuse a lot of people at first. It might cheapen the Bronco brand a bit, but it's essentially like a Ford Escape. They're just tiny little SUV. They're little crossover SUV people get for the city or wherever. But it's a lot more rugged. And then they also have crazy trim levels. They have a bunch of different options as far as like the Badlands, Black Diamond, the Wild Track, all those different off-roading options. So it's like a more rugged little crossover, like a RAV4, which is one of the best-selling little cars in the country. Is just a RAV4, and it's in that little that category. So people that live in the city and maybe want to get out in and outdoors a little bit more often, maybe do just a little bit of light off-roading, then get something like this and be a little bit more rugged, but not quite the full Bronco.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good move for Ford.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, they if Ford did one thing right, they definitely won the press release. They did a fantastic job with announcing this to the people, getting people excited about it, getting people revved up about potentially having a Ford Bronco one day. Like y'all said, it definitely brings the heat to Jeep. Jeep's going to make a lot of interesting moves over the coming years. Now, finally having that direct 1v1 competition. I mean, dude, look at the models that Ford released on these Broncos. They are one-to-one comparisons with Jeeps. You've got the
Right.
two-door, you got the four-door, which kind of also looks a little bit like the Gladiator truck that Jeep just released this year or last year.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
you've got the Broncos. Hold up. And then, sorry, you've got the Broncos Sport, which looks like the Jeep Compass and the RAV4 that you mentioned, but it's with that Jeep Compass. So it's going to be interesting to see what Jeep's reaction is to this situation. I'm excited. One day, I mean, Broncos are a dream, man. They're legends in American culture. Specifically, though, I want to bring this to y'all's attention. Specifically, there's one reason why Broncos are lore in American culture, right? So think about this. Last week, O.J. Simpson found himself trending on Twitter. Okay, OJ had a birthday party last week, and he was getting roasted on Twitter and via all the pro maskers out there because he wasn't wearing a mask at his birthday party. Right. 2 days later, Ford releases the Ford Bronco, a remastered Ford Bronco. Coincidence? I don't know.
Conspiracy.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
It very well might be. It
I
very
think
well
the
might
CIA
be. So
is involved for sure.
The CIA and
well,
Ford are in bed.
right. Maybe the CIA and OJ Simpson. We'll talk about that at a later date. Guys, so there was another big piece of news this week that I really want to talk about and who our listeners in on. So I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of her name. Barry or Barry. Barry Weiss. I go with Barry. Barry Weiss.
Barry.
Barry Wise.
Sorry.
Barry Weiss. Respect to her. She is a highly accredited New York Times op-ed author. She's been with the Times for 3 years. She resigned from the NYT this last week.
You there, Garrett?
Yeah, bad burp, bad beer burp.
Nice.
Oh God, that was bad, dude. My bad, guys. So
You're
anyway,
disrespecting Barry right now.
Barry Weiss announced her resignation via a resignation letter. Right? And so we all read that, and I really want to get your guys' take on this because it was pretty profound, guys. It was scathing. It caught a lot of traction on social media. It really kind of painted a picture onto what her experience was like at the New York Times, what progressive journalism looks like today in American culture, and it really opened a lot of people's eyes to that. So, Blake, you had a really good take on it last night. I want you to kind of start us off by letting us know what you kind of took from her scathing letter of resignation to the New York Times.
Can you give like a big summary?
Yeah,
like a
I'll
synopsis
summarize
to
what
give
what it's about.
context. Cool.
So for those of you who haven't read the resignation letter yet, I'd recommend reading it. It's not too long, but so essentially she's just talking about the culture within the New York Times, which I think is pretty accurate amongst all those bigger newspaper publications today, like maybe the Washington Post or some other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But she so what she was saying, or she was describing a culture of or she felt like she was being bullied during her 3 years at the New York Times for espousing some more centrist, moderate, and maybe even somewhat right-leaning viewpoints. And as we know, a lot of these big newspaper publications are very far left-leaning. To the point where she felt that if anyone would even say something remotely close to anything you know uh, different from the progressive agenda, that they would just get ridiculed and
Right.
pressured by their superiors. So she was just describing this culture within the New York Times, just kind of laying it out for everyone, which is something that I think a lot of people already kind of assumed was going on in these
Right.
newspaper publications, where if you don't follow that strict super progressive line of if you don't follow that, then your story's not going to get picked up. Your editors and whoever else is above you just isn't going to put that story out for you, because it doesn't fit in line with the sort of narrative that they're trying to push out.
So
Yeah,
would you say the issue here lies more with just like how old media, kind of touching on what we talked about last week, on how like the old, no matter what like publication it is necessarily, but say you are a writer and you sign yourself or like take a job at one big place because it's a big news media outlet and it's a good place to get your voice heard. But if you don't necessarily align with their viewpoints or push the narrative they're trying to push, your stuff's not going to get put out there. Essentially, is like the what she was trying to vocalize. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. So she describes herself as a passionate journalist, and what you want from a journalist is someone who objectively reports on the news. Takes it from an
Right.
objective standpoint. Not leaning right or left, just giving you the news how it's supposed, just how it's given. And she was saying that she would try to do that, and we're all human, we all have some sort of bias to us, and she probably has some conservative bias to her, but just trying to objectively report on the news was something that the New York Times didn't seem to want. It was something that they didn't seem to advocate. They wanted their reporters to feed news stories that, like I've already said, um, you know, follow that ultra progressive line, leaning one way versus the other. Um, and so, kind
So
of going back to
go ahead.
what we talked about last week with those the old style media corporations, where back before the internet, we had just a few big media companies that kind of controlled the dispersion of information throughout America. But now, obviously, with the internet, everything is so open, and information is widely dispersed to us, and you're just overwhelmed with all sorts of information from all different viewpoints, and different places lying on that spectrum from left to right. So I think that the difference here compared to how news companies used to be back in the day was, because you have such a wealth of information out there, these companies have to fight to stay alive, essentially, and they tend to put out things that are going to get the most clicks, things that are going to have the most outrageous headline or the most outrageous story, because as we're all well aware, controversy is what gets people's attention. Outrage. That's been kind of
Right.
the theme over the since the election cycle for the 2016 election. We've all seen that controversy and outrage has really bubbled up in American culture today. So I think that she's kind of calling that as bullshit. And it just so happens that the New York Times has taken on the position of reporting on one side of the aisle to piss people off on the other side of the aisle, and that's seems to be how they generate their income, generate those clicks and yeah, subscriptions.
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah, Manzer, you nailed that, dude. That's basically Barry Weiss's resignation letter summed up in its entirety. A couple major takeaways that I had that I want to run past you guys. First off, Blake, you already kind of ran through, basically that most major market, old school media conglomerates are ran by people with obvious liberal progressivism things, right? So one way, so when you work for a major corporation, how do you go about moving up the ladder, right? You have to please your bosses, right? So a lot of these people, and she kind of touches on this, are exchanging their core values and beliefs and objective journalism, understandings for, pleasing their bosses, saying what will be, positively recepted and taken by their bosses, right? So that's just kind of like a recurring culture in that she's kind of painting, right? Another thing that's very interesting is she says that Twitter has basically become the predominant editor of the New York Times, which basically goes to say that, kind of like what you talked about, Blake, is, clickbait, right? Like, you're scrolling through Facebook and then you find an article that, either makes you happy or it pisses you off, and you click on it and then you share it and you're like, told you.
And you have this war zone of comments down below that post.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. But like that's what drives like these content creators, like these major media conglomerates, like that's what keeps their business alive, like you said, right? The major thing I took away from this, I want to ask you guys this question: who's the bully? Okay, and this is kind of a profound question, but who's the bully? Okay, so you've got the New York Times. They obviously are one of the longest standing major media outlets in the entire country. We're founded on a very objective journalism foundational value. But now you've got a culture that she's painting at this company to where she's being bullied into submission based on her fundamental values and her want to kind of drive objective conversation amongst their readers. So you've got the ultra progressive people at the New York Times who are pushing their agenda, and their writings and their articles are basically like talking about a specific, like Trump being the bully, or some specific person being the bully, or some specific geographic group or whoever. So my question is, she kind of paints it to seem like the New York Times are actually the bully. So what should we take from that?
Yeah, so I think it's just this this movement that we've seen pop up over the past 5 years is they're using what they claim to be self-righteous values to kind of push their viewpoint on people. And if you don't agree with that viewpoint, which they hold to be true, because that fundamentalist, the fundamentalist progressive agenda it does have good roots, treating people fairly, treating people as equals, whether it be gay rights or black rights, treating those are good values, I think, to hold, and treating everyone as an equal human being. But I think that they use that to um, I think they take
Create a right
advantage.
and wrong group.
Right, they take advantage of that and use it as and just kind of dogmatically push what they believe to be right on other people. And if you don't agree with that, well, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a sexist. If you don't agree with what they think needs to be done to enact change in America, then you get painted in this light. And with these big media corporations, they've all of them kind of fit into that narrative, and so they're the ones who control the narrative if they're all on the same side. So they're the ones who kind of steer culture in that way. So
You're exactly right.
People who hold that viewpoint, I would say, are the bullies.
Right on, Cameron.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say it's just this outrage we find on social media, back and forth. Everyone, I think it's a dopamine or serotonin release or something where it makes you happy to feel like you're right and the other person is wrong. and it releases that into your brain, and that's like outrage. That's the outrage we see on social media all the time. Oh, this person's so wrong, and I know so much better than them, and they're so wrong. And that it goes back and forth both ways. I mean, left and right, whatever ideology. I think part of Barry's problem with the New York Times is just that the people that have come through there have bought into some of the more leftist marks. I mean, I say leftist because, I mean, even though left just represents the whole almost democratic side, people use that so loosely, but actually Marxist ideology, like inside of the Democratic Party now, it's so mainstream. And I think that started in the education system. Some of the ideologies that come through there are being pushed at a level just like in the journalism where they don't check their facts, or they want their facts to skew in one direction. They have the end goal in mind already. They have how they want the article to end already. Trump is the bad man. They already have that in mind as an ending, and then they'll just find whatever information they need to put in between inside of the article. And that's the same thing that's happened in the education system. A couple guys actually exposed this. Peter Boghossian, I think that's how you say that,
Yeah.
and James Lindsay. So there are a couple guys that were academics. I don't remember exactly their background completely, but the basics of it are they wrote a bunch of academic papers because they saw the state of the education system and the academic bureaucracy that was in place. So they wrote a bunch of academic papers. They had the end goal in mind of what they knew that these peer reviewers and publishers want. Yeah, exactly what they want to hear. Exactly what's been perpetuated in the education system already. A lot of these Marxist ideologies. White people are bad. Men are bad. White males are the worst.
Can I pause you there for a minute?
Yeah.
Just so people know what we're talking about, can you give some examples of these in quotes academic papers that these guys wrote? Because they're pretty hilarious.
Yeah. So if you're a cisgender straight white male, you're bad is their ideology. So that's the end goal in mind. And they wrote these articles or these academic papers.
Here,
One of them was titled "Going In Through the Back Door," and that was talking about how, I don't want to get too graphic here. You can actually look up the video, the clip of Joe Rogan. These two guys on Joe Rogan Experience helped make them pretty famous for what they did. But anyway, going in through the back door, rape culture and queer performativity in dog parks. So just relating stuff that has nothing to do. But anyway, and then fat bodybuilding. It's where they were proposing the idea that they should have a fat bodybuilding, event, like real bodybuilding, where you show off your fat, and how people that don't agree with this are just fat shaming bigots and whatever.
So Cameron, tell us why. Tell us.
How
I
does
was
this
just gonna say,
relate?
tell us no, just tell us what they're exposing. Tell us what they're like, what their goal was behind writing these farcical, ridiculous articles that still got posted amongst scholarly journals.
To show that it didn't matter what the content necessarily was, as long as it proved their ideology. Some of their a lot of the papers didn't get accepted. They go through, it's a multi-stage process, but a bunch of these papers ended up getting published. Just they started with the ideology ending in mind, and they used whatever BS information in between they needed to fix it.
So
And
it's more so based on their ability to pick whatever topic they want to speak on, and then articulate like an argument for it, and create a propelling, decision and resolution in a paper versus the actual content of what they're writing about. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Because of how skewed the education system is, because of the ideologies that they hold, the ideologies that don't make rational sense when you really break them down. And so they try to make you break down, and they're all peer reviewed academic papers, and they would send back, well, we don't think, you know, you you could represent this and because they would make up these authors for the academic papers. So one of the authors was like a white lesbian. So one of the responses they got was like, well, because this woman's white, then uh, she'd be questioned for her white allyship, and like, is she doing this just to be a white savior? And like all these power structures, because when you really get into this Marxist ideology, it's all about these weird power dynamics that don't make rational sense. And so they would get those kind of responses back, and then they would just change them or try to make them adhere, and it was just ridiculous, some of the things that they would say that it would get accepted, and then some of the things that they would be asked to correct.
So what is the point you're trying to drive here in regard to like the into Barry Wise?
Well, these ideologies that are taught in the education system are the same ones that these journalists come out of. And they have these ideologies in their head, and then they're only concerned with what the end goal is. Trump is the bad man. These people are the bad man. The power structure's wrong. It needs to be flipped or whatever. And they don't care enough what the meat of it is, what the truth of it is, to come to that end conclusion. So they have the conclusion of the article in mind before they write it, instead of doing actual journalism and
Objective
trying
research.
objective research. Yeah.
And I think
what you were just explaining was more a very like granular example pertaining back to how these larger media companies, whether they're left, right, whatever narrative they're trying to push, doesn't really matter. It's just the sheer form of power. And if it's almost, if you don't agree with this, go get a job at the other one, or like something like that.
Yeah, I think it's the guise of that they're trying to be objective and unbiased, but they have these underlying ideologies that are so prevalent. Like she said, like it's not representative of the population. They have an overwhelmingly large amount of people that have these ideologies, and they're not unbiased. You can't claim that the New York Times is unbiased because of the percentage of these journalists and publishers and editors inside of the New York Times. You can't say that they're an objective. Even though I watched an interview with the CEO, it seems like he means good and he wants everybody to be objective, and he doesn't think they should be going after Trump just because he's Trump. They should be going after whatever this pure journalism is supposed to be. And he seems like a good guy, but I think it comes down to each individual editor and journalist has these ideologies from the education system.
By education system, you're referring to like the higher education system, like when you learn your craft, becoming a journalist at a prestigious university such as like Cal Berkeley or Harvard or one of the Ivies or something like that. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, and inside of those fields of study too, I don't think Blake's engineering professors were getting all political or ideological with him about these Marxist views, and or left, even just liberal versus conservative views.
Right. So
I
the
don't
ma-
think they were getting into this. I think it's those fields of study, um, sociologies and journalism and stuff like that.
so the fields of
That just get
studies
more polarized.
that you're referring to are known as grievance studies programs. So
Okay.
those
Yeah.
have to do with like gender studies, a lot of like some just obscure fields in the
Like
humanities.
philosophy, ideology,
That could be
like
part of it.
anything
Over
that's thought centered.
right, yeah, things that are very subjective and just studies like um, that have to do with human beings that are less subjective just by nature. One thing that I kind of wanted to just add on to what Cameron was saying, just to highlight how hilarious the articles they wrote and just how ironic and backwards thinking
Yep.
these grievance studies programs are is so one of these papers that these guys published was essentially a rewrite of Hitler's Mein Kampf. I'm sure you guys are
I
all
saw
Oh,
that.
have all heard of that. So I have it pulled up here on the screen right now. So the title of this article I'm pulled up says, "Duped Academic Journal publishes rewrite of Mein Kampf as a feminist manifesto." And essentially what they've done, essentially what they did in this article was they copy and pasted Hitler's manifesto, but replaced all the words. Uh, I don't know the exact words that they replaced, but they replaced like white or they replaced some words with like feminist and feminism, just like basically rewriting it from the lens of a feminist, and just talking about how what the feminist goal should be in advancing that
Yeah,
So they
that
copy and
agenda.
pasted and switch some words just to
right.
highlight
Yeah,
how.
I think they replaced Jews with white men.
I think you're right. They replaced Jews with white men and
Yeah.
like the good guy
wow.
in
And
this
it got
reader.
published. It got
Yeah,
published?
it was so what does it say? It says to highlight
Did it receive any awards?
so it says to highlight alleged intellectual bias. Here, let me pull it here on the screen. To highlight alleged intellectual bias in university grievance study programs, 3 scholars write 20 absurd papers. 7 are accepted to top publications, and I think this was their most well received one.
Right.
So
Jeez.
our struggle is my struggle is essentially what Mein Kampf stands for. So it says the title is Solidarity Feminism as an Intersectional Reply to Neoliberal and Choice. So yeah, I think that's the one that received some of the best marks in these grievance studies programs.
So their
So-
goal was
so
to
guys-
essentially just discredit that process and like how
Basically,
you can't really trust the academia or academic world.
The people
for
who are supposed to
facts.
have the knowledge, they have the degree, are basically being discredited by a bunch of Joe Blows who have no authority or no academic authority to be writing these papers, obviously, and basically they're writing these things that they know is going to please the reader, and they're getting awarded for it by being published and receiving literal scholarship awards.
right.
That's crazy. I think, guys, the big picture thing is here that I've been really circulating in my brain over the last few years is where do we find what's true and what's not? Okay, and I think this is kind of encompassed over all areas, media, news, what we learn in school, all these things, man. It's how if everything that you read, everything that you learn is given to you with some inherent bias, what's true? And I do think that the objective journalism as an industry is dying. It's faltering. Obviously we became very aware of this, like you mentioned earlier, Blake, with the 2016 election. The concept of fake news was really
Right.
brought to our attention, right? We started to become self-aware of what we're being told and what's the real reason why we're being told something, by some of these major media conglomerates. That's what I just keep circulating with. And I think that we're all kind of agreeing with the sentiment is here is that, we should all be asking questions about everything that we learn, everything that we hear, everything that we read. We should be very meticulous with who we choose to listen to. And we should understand, we should understand that people out there are wanting to persuade us in some specific way.
Right.
Okay? People have an inherent agenda. And the things that you read, the people you listen to, have something that they are guiding you towards. And as long as you understand that and are able to then congregate your own convictional values, and you're a freestanding human being. But if you're telegraphing information from a source to your own views, then you're falling into the truth. And that's no conspiracy. That's just I just think that's fact. I really do. I think that's kind of where we are.
I think the most important thing to do
Ask questions.
When looking at ask questions, that's a big part of it. But just be objective. Have an open mind. Don't fall into the tribal nature that we all share. You know, we're all basically advanced monkeys. So we're tribal by nature, and I think the best thing we can do is fight that urge to pick a side on one side of the fence or the other. And you know, as we evolve as a society and as a civilization, I think, you know, what the most important thing to do is to search for objective truth, knowing that we all have inherent biases because we are all human and we all come from different backgrounds. I mean, all of us came from pretty similar backgrounds, and I think a lot of us have pretty similar viewpoints on a lot of issues. But other people listening to this came from a completely different background, so they're going to have their own set of viewpoints. So I think what's important to know, or what's important to be aware of, is that bias. Just and don't, you know, just know that that's there, know that that's always going to exist, and try to get past it. Try to, you know, don't hate people for their opposing viewpoints. Just have a discussion and try to reach a rational viewpoint. I think that's the most important thing.
Keeping an open dialogue, talking stuff out.
And I tell you what, dude, people at the end of the day, man, this is my final take, and we can move on to the next. People are so focused right now on how we are different and where we disagree. At the end of the day, we are so much more similar than what we like to kind of agree that we are.
For sure.
You know, we are all on this earth. We are experiencing similar things. We are going through different troubles, and we are, you know, living this life, right? And, you know, if you're able just to hear someone out and be empathetic and just understand what someone's going through and understand what they believe, you're going to make it in this world, you know? So just keep an open mind, just talk to people, just hear people out, express your views, find out what you truly believe, ask questions, be open, and everything's going to work out, guys. We're going to get through these hard times, all right? So we just got really heavy there for a long time. Let's lighten it up a little bit, boys. Yeah, it was. It really was. Guys, we really hope that y'all enjoyed that. We're going to move on here and talk a little bit about sports. As we, you know, have kind of talked about last couple of weeks, you know, I'm kind of the you know, go-to sports guy in this podcast. I'm going to update everyone on what's kind of going on in that regard. So Monday morning, we're going to wake up. We're going to be in a week that's going to have sports guy. We have not been able to say that for a long time. It's been a long time, right? So starting next week, July 24th, we have MLB coming back. We have MLB professional baseball games starting next weekend. The Braves play next Friday night against the Mets. Going to be tuning in. Yeah, so we got baseball coming back. Some big news with baseball. A couple things. First off, Toronto Blue Jays were recently not granted permission from their city council to be able to play games in Toronto.
Wow.
So, yeah, the Canadians, man, they are serious about the curve. And from what it sounds like, they are flattening it pretty well, and they don't want to, you know, risk what they have going on there. And they have disavowed their in-house Blue Jays from playing in their city. So it seems like the Blue Jays are probably going to play with one of their like minor league affiliates. Cameron, you're shaking your head. What's going on?
Oh, Canada's just silly sometimes.
Oh, Canada's always silly, bro. Like, don't get me wrong.
Man.
That's why I'm bringing this up.
Justin
out of the
Trudeau
30,
is just a funny dude. He likes to dress up. He likes to play dress up. Have you guys seen? You know who I'm talking about? Justin Trudeau.
Mm-mm.
the PM.
Yeah, of Canada. Yeah, he likes to play dress up, and it's hilarious. He'll like whoever he's going to talk to, like he's going to talk to a group of people, he'll dress up like them. Like if he's going to talk to like African people, he'll put on some like African shirts, or like Indian people put on one of them long shirts or something.
Or like
He went to talk to handicapped people at some handicap event, and he's in his own like electric wheelchair. He was riding around. He's just a ridiculous character. He's hilarious. You guys should look up a little bit on Justin Trudeau. He is just a joke, man. But some of the policies they're passing are very questionable. I'm glad I don't live there in Canada. I'm glad I live here and have my freedom.
We had a lot of people after the 2016 election that were vowing to move to Canada. So we need to touch base with those people and see. You touch base with them and see how they're doing in Canada. But anyway, so so Toronto is going to have to figure out where they're going to play baseball. Probably going to come back to the US of A and play here somewhere, as the 29 other teams in the MLB are all playing baseball in the States. So other thing I want to touch on is the coronavirus numbers in the MLB right now. So the MLB has actually done a really good job of flattening the curve, air quotes here. Only 0.05% of players and staffers in the MLB so far have tested positive. I want to say 83 out of 21,000 total tests have come back positive. So the numbers look good. It's promising here. The NBA is also starting next week. You've got 22 teams sitting in the bubble right now down in Disney World, down in Orlando, that are basically staying in a hotel, right? And this has become like a major social media following, right? You've got all these teams. You got 22 teams down there, okay? You got all the players are not allowed to leave the facility, the bubble, okay? So there's this thing called a snitch line, right? So the snitch line is basically a open phone number for people in the bubble to call and tattletale on either their teammates or their opponents, right? So if you know that you're about to play the Rockets next week, are you going to call and tattletale on like their star players? You know, like that's just so funny to me. So a lot of things are going on down there. One thing I found really interesting when I was doing some research today, I don't really follow the NBA too much, but the research that I did today was really interesting. So one thing that they changed typically for the bubble is they are not testing the players for marijuana, right? So, guys, I have a question for y'all. Over under 22 teams, 15 players per team. How many pounds of marijuana are currently at the hotel at the resort that they're all staying at? How many over under? I'm gonna say
unlimited.
I'm gonna say 100 pounds. Over or under?
I don't know why we're not talking in terms of tons.
How many tons? How many tons of Kush are currently at Disney World? How many? I'm gonna say
go with half a ton.
I'm gonna say under. I'm
gonna go with 6 elephants.
How much? What's the tonnage factor on an elephant?
Too much. Anyway,
which elephant?
Guys,
which breed? An Asian
right,
elephant? An African elephant?
Just your standard elephant.
The standard.
It's about 6.5 tons.
What's standard? Tons. African or Asian?
All right, we don't need to talk about elephants.
Yeah, let's.
Thank you. So, guys, I bring all this up to basically hit you with this little nugget. Okay, the next 2 weeks are going to decide the future of sports in America. Okay, the next 2 weeks, right?
Oh, bye, Brian.
Like we said, Major League Baseball is starting. You've got NBA is starting within the bubble. these guys are going to be in the bubble for at least a month before they can play games. So they're like totally like locked in on the quarantine. And the NFL, the biggest brand of all of these, starts training camp on July 28th. You know, the NFL right now is dealing with issues with its players wanting to know about safety and health guidelines. You know, not a lot of progress has been made there. A lot of controversy on Twitter today. So we'll see what happens there. But guys, the next 2 weeks are really going to decide the future of sports. Okay? If the next 2 weeks don't go well, if cases rise, if players start opting out, if teams start backing out, if things get bad, then the future of sports is really going to change because, you know, obviously we're living in unprecedented times, and it's going to be interesting to watch, guys. It's going to be interesting to watch. We might, if things get bad, we might not have football. Might not have baseball. We might not have basketball for a very long time, and it may never be the same. Right. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see. The thing is, though, is like, you know, if you're not a sports guy, like you can laugh and just, you know, say, oh, what does it matter? But our country needs something else to talk about other than freaking racism and coronavirus disease. Like we need some optimism. We need some goodness in our life, and sports really does provide that. So, you know,
we need to funnel those tribalist thoughts into picking your favorite team, beating your least favorite team.
Yeah, pretty much.
Georgia right, crushing Ole Miss later in the season.
Yeah, dude, don't even bring that up. I want to bring that up right now. So, manager, speaking of, real quick, let me dig on you real quick. So, the last time that Georgia and Ole Miss played, we spanked y'all 45-14. Anyway, on to the next topic. So, guys, we're going to – Cameron, do you want to talk about whatever that is, epoxy table? I don't even know what that is, dude. Should we just move on to the follow-up questions?
Yeah.
Let's talk about.
All right, let's save that. Let's save that for a future conversation, guys. Our followers, our subscribers, our listeners, we really appreciate your questions that you've been sending in over the last couple weeks. We got a lot of really cool questions this week. We narrowed it down to a couple cool topics that we want to talk about today. First, we want to go ahead and bring up our favorite listener. Pryor has sent in another awesome question. So we're all, you know, video game nerds here. Let's go ahead and settle finally, after all these years, PS5 or Xbox One.
I think we're all going to say Xbox because we've grown up on Xbox. I don't think any of us have owned a PlayStation.
Oh my gosh.
I had a PlayStation 2.
Tear this world apart. Trey is just trying to create divide in our country. PlayStation versus Xbox, Chipotle versus Moe's. Jeez. But yeah, Xbox.
Yeah, pretty much.
PC Master.
Listen, you know, I just like the feel of an Xbox controller in my hands opposed to a PlayStation controller every day of the week. That's just me. You know, obviously we're all biased here because we have Xboxes. My experience with the PlayStation Network is not as favorable as it is with the Xbox Live Network. I don't know. From my experience, I've really enjoyed my Xbox experience. It's going to be interesting to see what the numbers are going forward, with 2020 being a year that both of the consoles are going to be competing against each other at Christmas time. So we'll stay tuned, and as we get more information about the new systems, we will keep you guys updated on what our recommendation will be going forward with that.
Real quick on that, I just want to add something. So I was reading this article the other day about how PlayStation fans on average have a lower IQ than Xbox players.
Yeah, please share those numbers. Let me
I knew it.
Yeah, so Cameron being the obvious outlier with an IQ closer to the PlayStation people. So it's about a 10-point difference in on average IQ
statistics.
IQ statistics. So yeah, those PlayStation players have about a 90. Let's go with 85 IQ, and Xbox is in the 100 to 105 average range. Again, with Cameron being the outlier.
Right on. Right on, right on. All right, let's close it out with this
I have
question.
a 150 IQ.
Okay, let's move
All
on.
right.
Okay.
Talking about
weird.
low IQ stuff.
Sheesh, here we go. Weirdest gas station moments.
First, can we
Newsom.
talk about this question?
Yeah.
Like what?
Let's talk about Newsom's question.
How many weird gas station moments have you had, Newsom?
Yeah. What?
Newsom's always having weird gas station moments.
So I'll be honest, man. Nothing comes to recent memory. I feel like okay. How about this? I was on a road trip today. I drove a few hours and back in Oxford. Shout out Ole Miss, baby. So I stopped at 2 gas stations on my trip today, and it's very interesting to watch people right now entering a public place. And a gas station is a very interesting social experiment there, right? Because you've got obviously, you've got pro-maskers, anti-maskers, whatever, but watching people interact and like go about their lives in these gas stations, which we can all agree that even before the coronavirus pandemic was a nasty place and a germy place to go into in the first place. Like going into a gas station bathroom was risky beforehand, right? So my experience today from like a weirdness standpoint is just kind of like interactions with people in a normal state, right? Like, be this far? Should I be wearing a mask? Like it's just people are so on edge right now in gas stations across the Southeast. So that's my take. What do you guys have?
I agree. It's a little weird. You can see. I don't wear a mask. I just try to smile at people, and sometimes you can see behind the mask their little eyes. They like give you a little look of disapproval, like they you should be wearing a mask. Oh gosh, and it's just kind of funny. I just smile at people though, and
So anything specific to gas stations?
specific to gas stations, nope.
All right, so
Like you said you did. I think I have one. I'm trying to remember it.
yeah, so the only weird gas station moment I can think of was like during my junior year in high school. So I'm sure you guys all remember those little paper fake IDs that Ryan Bowman made for a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Oh
He's
man,
gonna
that
get
brings back
arrested.
some good memories.
So I were
wait, maybe we should clip that out.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, good.
So we were
Statute of
all
limitations.
we were all gearing up for another party on a Friday night back in high school, and so for some reason I was the designated alcohol buyer that day. So I used that paper fake ID to buy some beer at one gas station, and it worked. And so we were driving around, and we, as it always happens, we got a request from some other friends to get some more beer for them because everyone wants their specific beer. Especially girls want their seltzers, whereas guys don't really give a shit. So we were on our way back, and we ended up having to stop at another gas station in the town. And again, I think I was the only person with a fake, so I was the designated alcohol buyer. And so after I had used it the first time, I flipped my actual license on top of the paper fake, which I didn't realize. So I went into the store and grabbed like a 24 pack of Bud Light, set it on the thing. The guy asked for my ID, which I was expecting, and so I just nonchalantly showed him mine, and he looked at it. He's like, I can't accept this, and I look at him in shock. I'm like, why? He's like, it says your birthday is you're too young to buy this, and I was just in disbelief. I was like, but it says something different on the license. And so he handed it back, and I realized that I had my real one on top. And so
And switch it out.
And I'm like, should I just put this back and leave? And he's like, just get out. I'll put it back for you. I was like, all right, yes, sir. And I just got out of there as quickly as possible.
Oh my
If
god!
you have not had that experience, have not had that experience in your life, not truly living.
Being
You're just
turned
not truly
down.
living if you've not. Yeah, dude, you're just not truly living.
Yeah, that was a big moment for me.
My only
I
thing, mine would be similar. It's the that Homer's gas station for like a year in high school. The guy didn't care, no IDs, and
Yeah.
it's just a very, very strange place.
Yeah. All right, guys. Are your hearts and minds clear? Everybody got everything they want to get off the chest? Topic's
Yeah.
cool.
I'm smiling
Right
and
on.
satisfied.
Well, guys, this has been the third episode of Bona Fide Talk. For those of you who have stuck through this up and down, deep and shallow conversation that we've had tonight, we appreciate you. We welcome you back to the next episode, and here's to that time. Thank you for listening. Peace out.
Yep. Peace, guys.
See ya.
Thanks for watching.